are jumping in to our series, Pillow Talk, part 2 of this series. Last week, we talked about the elements of attraction, and we're learning from a series of songs. It's really best described as a Broadway musical that was written by King Solomon thousands of years ago that tells a story of a young woman and a young man that are madly in love. And then there's some ensemble cast and characters that jump in, and it's musical, and it's poetic, and it's beautiful, and it's this really, really idealized picture of what it looks like to be in a relationship the way that God has designed that relationship to be in. And so we talked about what makes us attractive to somebody of the opposite sex, and what should make us attracted to a potential mate. Now, I know as we jump into this series that over the next couple of weeks, there are a lot of us that are in a broad spectrum. Some of us are married. Some of us are dating and engaged. Some of us are single. Some of us are single again. Some of us are single with a heart to be in a relationship. And others of us are single and really are passionate about pursuing God's call of celibacy and singleness for the duration of our life. And so that's a broad group of people to communicate to as we look at this particular context. But I think what's so important for all of us and what we'll see today is that regardless of what stage of life you're in or what your heart desires, Song of Songs has a unique message just for you. But you will miss that message if you do not hold on to our guidelines and our rules for the series. So we've got 2 rules that we've been talking about that are essential for this series. The first one is this: listen for you, not the person next to you. So, ladies, no elbows in the side to the guys. Fellas, no amens, no air high fives, all right? No glory, glory, hallelujahs, all right? We're going to keep that to ourselves. We're going to draw a circle around our feet and work on everybody inside the circle. We've got to do that if we're going to hear what God has for us. Here's the second one. Don't look back. As we talk about what we're talking about, even today, especially, I would say, you're going to be tempted to look back at the relationship that you had in the past, or the thing that didn't work out, or the pain of the past, either something you did or something that somebody did to you. But we are not people who look back, because we have a God who makes all things new. How many of us are grateful that our God is a God of fresh starts and new beginnings? Are we grateful for that today? Amen. So this is a hope-filled message. This is a view for the future. This is believing God's best is yet to come. And so today, we're going to ask this question: what is God's way of romance? And what's beautiful is that God gives us a picture of that. And what we're going to see in the ensuing song that gets sung is that God's got a way that He's designed romance to happen. But unfortunately, we live in a day that looks at that view and says, oh, that is so backwards. That is so behind the times. That is something that is not necessary today. Because we live in a cultural moment where our culture's way of romance is not marked by God's way, but marked by something else. This is how I would describe it. We are marked by this kind of cultural way of romance. It starts with hook up, all right? And so nowadays, if you're under 30, that means meet somebody on an app, right? You swipe right, swipe left, whatever it might be, right? You hook up. Maybe that's, you meet somebody. And hookup is you go out on a date, you chat a little bit, you go back to her house, you go back to his house, you put on some Netflix, you don't even know what's on the TV because you ain't watching the TV, if you get what I'm saying, right? That's kind of where it starts, hookup. Then it moves to shack up, like spending the night at somebody's house one time turns into 2 times, turns into a week, turns into a month, and then all of a sudden you're kind of just living together. And part of the reason why is it's more economical, especially if you're an adult, right? One rent, one amount of bills, that just seems like a better situation. And for many of us, we've been taught this kind of idea that you want to kind of take something for a test drive before you buy it, right? I mean, how many of us are Amazon people? Any Amazon people in the house? I love Amazon, all right? But Amazon is paralyzing for me because I read all of the reviews. So has anybody ever ordered 3 of the same thing to figure out which one you like? Just me? All right, cool. That's like the idea here of hookup and shack up. We're gonna act like we're married before we're married, but without the commitment. But that inevitably, for most people, leads to breakup. In fact, 64% of adults today are living in this kind of relationship reality where they've hooked up, they've shacked up, they've lived with, and then they've broken up with multiple partners, which leads to repeat. Hook up, shack up, break up, and repeat. And while this seems like a good idea intuitively, right? Like there seems like there's good intention here. Hey, like let's try this thing out before we decide if we want to make the commitment. What we're finding is that that is not what is happening. We're not getting better marriages or better long-term commitments as a result of that. So while 70% of American adults are either a part of or have been in a relationship like this, what we're finding is that marriage and long-term commitment is falling apart. And here's the reason why. You play how you practice. You play how you practice. Meaning in a culture of hook up, shack up, break up, repeat, you are practicing what will inevitably be the reality in your future marriage or your future relationship. Because you've learned over time to do certain things that do not bring connection with one partner, but actually creates disconnection with many. There's a lot of research out here that I think is super important. And if you're a person who's living in this kind of relationship, or you've been in this relationship, or that's the way that your relationship started, know that like welcome to the family. Like the majority of people, that's the way in which we have started. But the cost of that is pretty significant. And you don't have to take the Bible's word for it. This is just empirical research. This is what research has shown over the last 50 years as this kind of relationship where you don't make a promise and then move in, but that you kind of move in and then practice to eventually make a promise that usually don't make. This is what the data shows, that our culture's way of romance leads to higher levels of stress. That people that are in this kind of hook up, shack up, break up, repeat kind of culture have higher levels of anxiety. I was reading a New York Times article, and a woman, I think, put it so well. She said, I feel like I'm auditioning to be my boyfriend's wife, and I've been doing it for many years, and the stress of not knowing whether or not he really wants me or not is killing me. Here's the second thing. It increases the potential for divorce. Data shows that people that live together before they get married, that kind of do it the cultural way, hook up, shack up, break up, repeat, they are 33% more likely to divorce than those that made a promise and then began their marriage. Thirdly, it lessens sexual enjoyment. I care about you deeply. And young people, I hope that you have a big vision for your life. That single folks, you have a big vision for a future of a robust sexuality, if that's something that you feel God is calling you to. And the data shows that people that live in a hook up, shack up, break up culture, their desire for sex and their enjoyment of sex is far less. And here's the reason why. Because the more sexual partners you have, the more of a Rolodex you have to compare against the person that you're currently with. And so people feel insecure in that relationship because they know how many people that you've been with, and you are comparing yourself or the person you're with to all of the other sexual partners that you have had, which also leads to less happiness and more conflict. Ironically, you would think that the more that you spend time together and the more that you practice before you get married, the better you'd be at dealing with conflict. But the opposite is actually true for those of us that choose that path. And this is the thing that's probably most concerning for me, even though all of these things are concerning, is that this kind of mentality, if you are a woman, I pray that you would consider not walking in this kind of relationship because you are the one that has the most to lose in the reality of it. In fact, domestic violence is 5 times as higher for women that are in this kind of hook up, shack up, break up kind of relationship than women that have been with a man who makes a promise and then they move in together. And the amount of kids that have been born outside of the context of marriage is creating incredibly difficult situations for our children. In fact, this is what data shows over the last 10 years, that the percentage of children born in the U.S. outside of the covenant and the beauty of a promise of marriage has moved from 21% to 43%. Meaning that 2 out of every 5 kids in America today are growing up in homes where mom and dad are not committed to each other. And 1 out of 3 of those kids are living in homes where mom and dad are not living together at all, and the family itself is unstable. The research shows that the kids that succeed the most in life are kids who are with a mom and a dad in a committed relationship called marriage. The stakes are high. And so maybe you've heard baggage or you carry baggage from these kinds of talks about relationships and stuff like that. Listen, I'm the first one to say, Stacy and I didn't do every single thing right, and the last thing we're here to do is to shame anybody about the choices that you've made or that the journey that you're on, because we've got our stuff too. But I share this with you because I love you. I share this with you because if this is the situation you're in married, it might help diagnose some of the issues that you're dealing with in your marriage right now. And maybe right now you're thinking, gosh, that's what it is. If you're single, my hope is that you would move away from culture's picture of dating and romance because it's going to cost you in ways they never talk about. And for those of us that are parents, those of you that are teenagers, I pray that you would make a choice. You would pre-decide that if you want to have a great sex life, if you want to have an awesome future, if you want to have the notebook, fairy tale, incredible potential of a great relationship, you will not pick culture's way of romance because it comes at a cost that is way too high. What I love about this old book that some people think is boring, called the Bible, is that it's not just a book written by one person, but it's a series of poetry and incredible narrative and history all put together. And God has put these words together to give us a great pathway to experience His best as it pertains to relationship. So King Solomon says this. He says this in Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verse 1. This is kind of another wisdom book that he's written. He says this, for everything there is a season. Would you guys say season with me on the count of three? 1, 2, 3. Season. And a time for every purpose under heaven. Here's what we'll learn today, is that there is a reason for each relationship's season. That God has designed relationship to work in a way where there are certain seasons that we need to walk through, and there's a reason for each of those seasons. And if we try to jump past where God has us, we will find ourselves in a place we never wished we would be. So I want to give you those seasons today. Here's the first one. Write it down in your notes. It's the season of pursuit. So last week we left off with the lover and his beloved in an embrace, about to kiss. She turns and she looks at her crew and she says, daughters of Jerusalem, don't awaken love before it's time. End scene, intermission. You went to get your Skittles, whatever, and now we're back. The scene opens up, and this is what we find in Song of Songs, chapter 2, verse 8. Listen, my beloved. This is her speaking. Look, here he comes, leaping across the mountains, bounding over the hills. Verse 9, my beloved is like a gazelle or a young stag. That's the Hebrew word for stud muffin. Look, there he stands behind our wall, gazing through the windows, peering through the lattice, not in a creeper way, but just kind of like knocking on the door. Verse 10, my beloved spoke and said to me, arise, my darling, my beautiful one, and come with me to the olive garden. That's what we see happening. He is now entered into her life. He's knocking on the door, and he's pursuing her. He's initiating with her. Maybe she's at her house, and it's mama, and she's talking to mama. Or maybe she's with her roommates, right? Gals, you know how you do this, right? Like you got a roommates that are together, right? Living together, and there's a new guy, and it's like all the girls are like kind of waiting to see if he's coming, all that kind of stuff. Like that situation, that's what's going on here. And look what he says. He says, see, the winter is past, the rains are over and gone. Meaning there was a season of his life when he wasn't ready to pursue her in a relationship, but that time is past. And he says, look, baby, flowers appear on the earth. The season of singing has come. The cooing of doves is heard in our land. I don't know how doves coo. I don't know. Verse 13, the fig tree forms its early fruit. The blossoming vines spread their fragrance. Arise, come, my darling, my beautiful one, come with me. This is not a late night text, hey, what you doing? Like, that's not what this is. This is an intentional choice to say, I'm in a season of my life where I'm ready to pursue you, and I'm going to do what is necessary to come to where you are. Write this down. God has a season when we're ready to pursue a relationship. Now I want to be really careful here, okay? Because some of you are single, and you are in a season when you're ready to pursue a relationship, and it doesn't seem like it's coming your way. Just because you're not in a relationship does not mean that you're not in a season for one. It just means that perhaps God hasn't brought the right person or the right time. And here's what I would also like to say, is that many of us, or some of us, because we did not live in the season God called us to, are now living with a lot of regret. So let me just say this. I think it's an important thing to remember. It is better to be single and want to be married than be married and want to be single. Can I get a good amen? And so this is the season that they're in. So he's going to pursue her. Write this down. Parents, I'm going to give you some this is like parenting gold right here, okay? It rhymes and you can remember it, okay? How do you know when you're in a season to pursue a person in a relationship? Well, here it is, okay? You shouldn't pursue he or she unless you can check all three. Y'all say that with me. Ready? 1, 2, 3. You shouldn't pursue he or she unless you can check all three. Well, what are the three things? They're the three things we talked about last week. And if you missed that message, I'd encourage you to go online and watch it. But these are the three questions you should be asking if you're single or if you're dating, as you think about the person that you might want to be in a relationship with. The first question is this: are we spiritually attracted? Meaning, is this person passionate about God the way that I'm passionate about God? Because you can't make that thing up, and if it's not there now, trust me, you being with them isn't going to make it happen. Here's the second one. Are we emotionally attracted? Meaning, is the character of this person the kind of character that I would want in my life as well? And lastly, but still importantly, are we physically attracted? Meaning, am I okay with the idea of growing old with this person and waking up looking at them the older that we get, all right? Now, I want you to notice all three are important, but there is an order to all three. Y'all got that? All three are important, but there is an order to all three. Too many of us start with the physical attraction piece. Ooh, she fine. Ooh, he look good. He got a six-pack, right? All that kind of stuff, right? And then we try to shoe in the emotional attachment, and then it's not there. And then we try to bring in the spiritual component, and we feel like we're dragging them through life because we're trying to pursue God, and they're an anchor. Let me tell you, when you flip the script and you find somebody who's pursuing God and you allow their character to be the thing that you fall in love with, over time, you could be 50, 60, 70, old, gray with gravity and still be like, ooh, she fine, all right? That's a real thing that can happen. Because when your spiritual attraction and emotional attraction drive everything, physical attraction is the easiest piece. So married folks, I think part of the reason why people are waiting longer to get married, part of the reason why people are struggling with the idea of whether or not marriage is a good choice is because they're looking at our marriages. And I think they're uninspired by what they see. And so why would they commit their life to be in a relationship with somebody if that marriage is going to look like some of ours? Parents, this is why I'm a firm believer in this, and Stacy and I will say this till the day that we die. The greatest gift we can give our kids is a hot, connected, in love marriage. That's the greatest gift we can give them. Because we want them to have a great picture of what intimacy and romance and promises can be like. And so this isn't just a conversation for those of us who are single and dating. Married people, here's this thing that you need to hear. The moment you stop pursuing your spouse is the moment you start to destroy your marriage. Like some of you fellas, you were so good at the dating part. I mean, you crushed it before y'all got married. I mean, you were creative. You came up with unique ways to do stuff. All of a sudden, she said, I do, and you're on like the couch eating nachos, right? Like, that is not how this works. Ladies, don't look at him right now. Look here. Just look here, all right? I'm trying to help you, all right? So Stacey and I have an illustration we like to use a lot with premarital. Come on up here, babe. About the fact that marriage is not a stagnant thing. That marriage is never something that's just static. It's always dynamic and it's always moving. And the reality is that you can either start pursuing or when you stop, here's what happens. When you stop pursuing, you end up walking away from each other. You never stay in the same place you are. And the problem when you're like this, when you're not pursuing your spouse, is that your back is turned to them. I can't see her. I can't know her. She can't see me, and she can't know me. And if my eyes are out here, there will be a lot of things to distract me and to distract her. And parents, oftentimes, the thing that is distracting you most is your kids. And listen to me. Your children, listen. Your children will ruin your marriage, and you will ruin your children if you use them as an excuse to stop pursuing your spouse. But when we turn, yeah, you can clap for that. That's good preaching, all right? Now, when we turn to each other and we start pursuing each other, hey, how was your day? Hey, you look beautiful. Hey, what cool trip do we want to plan to go on together? Hey, I found, somewhere to watch the kids. We're going out on a random time. Hey, that looks really good. Why are you wearing that tonight? Oh, I see what's going on. As that happens, the closer that you get, the more intimate you become, and good things happen, right? All right, so we'll say that. Hear me. Married folk, you got to do this. Husbands, you need to take the lead in this area. You need to pursue your spouse. The moment you stop, is the moment you start to destroy your marriage. Which leads to the second season. We got the season of pursuit. This is God's way, which leads to the season of preparation. Verse 14 says this, my dove, this is him talking to her, in the clefts of the rock, in the hiding places on the mountainside, show me your face. Let me hear your voice, for your voice is sweet and your face is lovely. And he says this in verse 15, catch for us the foxes, the little foxes that ruin the vineyards, our vineyards that are in bloom. So what he's saying is we're cultivating a beautiful garden of love and romance and relationship. I'm pursuing you and you're responding. And he looks at her and he says, hey, let's make sure that this beautiful garden that we're cultivating doesn't get destroyed and ruined by some foxes that were going to come in and take the good fruit that we're trying to produce. We've got to guard the gate and guard against the foxes that want to come in. And if you're single or in a dating relationship, this is really, really important because the foxes will creep in, and oftentimes we overlook the foxes when we're dating, and then the foxes become a bigger issue when we're married. So write this down. A little fox now will become a big issue later. The best time to deal with the little foxes in your life are in the single and dating phase of your life. Because here's what I know, is that marriage doesn't solve problems, it just makes them bigger. Which begs this question, are we preparing for the challenges of a committed relationship now? So young people, now is the time that you need to start thinking about your character. Now is the time to start dealing with that addiction issue and get it handled. Now is the time to deal with that insecurity issue and bring it to light. Now is the time to be in a relationship with a mentor and to work through your stuff. And this is not like when you're 19 or 20, like 13 years old, 14 years old. Start the process and the journey now of becoming a more whole person. Because the reality is that marriage is not the solution or the fix. Marriage just exacerbates what's already there. Which means if you're on a date, this is for free, it rhymes. The way you honor your date is the way you'll honor your mate. Meaning if there are little foxes or issues right now in your soul that you're not dealing with, fellas, if you find yourself pushing the boundaries about what's physically permissible and honoring to her while you're dating, don't think that once you get married, everything's going to get better because you're already objectifying her. Young women or women in general, regardless of age, when you go on a date with a guy, if you find it hard to honor him because he's really a boy that can shave, don't think that if he puts a ring on your finger, all of a sudden things are going to get better. So hear me. If you're in a dating relationship right now, and in the back of your mind, things aren't going well, and you think, well, if we get married, it will fix it, it will not fix it. And married people, if you're in a mess of a relationship right now, and you think if we just have a baby, things will get better, it will not get better. Because the last time I checked, the less sleep that you have and the more exhausted you are with a little screaming child does not make things better, okay? Like, don't believe the lie. Like, if you would just agree with that, could all the married people just say amen? If you say marriage isn't going to make it better, just say amen. Yeah. So I want to be helpful to you today. To those of you who are single and kind of looking, to those of you who are dating and evaluating, I want to talk to you about the foxes that might look little now that could become big later, that you either need to handle right now before you make a further commitment, or you need to walk away from. Here are a couple of things that if you see this, you should just walk away, or at least say the answer is no until this is dealt with. The first one is the abuser. If you're in a relationship with somebody who's abusive, you need to walk away from it. And if you're married in a relationship with someone who's abusive, let me just kind of deconstruct something that has hampered the church for a long time. Christian women in the room in particular, but Christian men, Christian women in particular, you do not have to stay with him if he is physically abusive. Do you hear me? You do not have to stay with him if he is physically abusive. If there is fear for your life in that relationship or fear for your safety, let one of our elders know, let me know, and we will walk you through the process of safety. But I'm going to just dismantle the lie right now. Just because you said yes 20 years ago does not mean you say yes today if he is harming you. God's heart for you is greater than that. There's separation that can happen. Perhaps there's reconciliation, but do not stay in a marriage if the man is abusing you or if she is abusing you. Got it? Okay. Here's the second one. We got that one out of the way. Here we go. If he or she's arrogant, really reconsider whether or not this is the person for you. If this is a person who's an addict in denial, like if the drinking problem is just a little drinking problem right now, trust me, it'll become a big drinking problem later. Deal with it now or walk away from it. The manipulator. Fellas, if you're dating right now and you call her and you say, hey, hon, the guy's invited me out to grab some wings. It's Thursday night. I know we don't have anything planned. Is it cool if I do that? And if you hear her on the other phone, either stay real quiet for a minute and then eventually say, it's fine, whatever, click. We all know it's fine, whatever it meant. It's not fine at all, right? If you hear that, deal with that now because that's manipulative behavior. And you don't need to be in that relationship. Look at me, fellas. Do not look at the person you're with right now, okay? That's manipulative. It's unhealthy, and it will erode a relationship. Work through honesty now. Don't think getting married is going to make it better. The spiritual unequal. Man, if you're running with somebody who doesn't love God the way that you love God, you're going to end up dragging them for the rest of your life. It is not worth the race. It is the best thing you can do is to release them, to go find somebody who's running at their pace so you can find somebody who's running at yours. The blame shifter. If this person's always making excuses, it's never their fault, guess what? Eventually, it'll become your fault. The lazy person. If they're living at home with mama with no direction as to what they want to do, and they're really good at video games, and that's it, they can be really good being by themselves, all right? You do not need to be with them. The angry outburster, a person who's spending their time leading out of anger, not able to exert self-control, walk away. The cheater and liar, sayonara. The financial mess. If they can't handle their money as an individual, don't think that putting your money together is going to make it better. If they're overspending, don't think that they're just going to stop it because now you're together. If they're not able to make a budget, don't think they're going to be able to make a budget now because you're together. That is not the way this thing works. Now listen, we don't need people to be Jesus before we take the next step with them, but we need to be people who own our stuff and want to walk in the way of Jesus as it pertains to those things. So ladies, do not marry Mr. Mama's boy, because if he's got a mama who's taking care of him, he's going to marry you and you won't be his wife. You're going to be his what? His mama. And now he's got two mamas, and those two mamas are going to fight, and that's going to be the rest of your life. Don't do it. And fellas, don't marry Miss Never Enough. If she's never happy, if she finds herself never content with the situation she's in with her own life or what you guys are doing, you just need to walk away. And I'm not saying you need to walk away forever. What I am saying is do not enable that relationship without saying, hey, there's some stuff we need to work on. These little foxes, we need to prepare for them. We need to work through them. And these are the decisions we need to make ahead of time. So she says, my beloved is mine and I'm his. He browses among the lilies. That phrase, browses among the lilies, literally means that they are kissing. So there's this moment where they've found pursuit with one another. They are preparing for the relationship. They're working through their stuff. Their emotional magnetism is beginning to connect, and they actually kiss one another. The music's going to crescendo at this moment. Everybody's kind of leaning in. Ooh, this is the second kiss. Verse 17, look at what she says. She says, until the day breaks and the shadows flee, turn, my beloved, and be like a gazelle or like a young stag on the rugged hills. Meaning they kiss, it kind of gets a little hot and heavy, the passions begin to raise, and she sets a boundary. And she says, that's as far as we're going. You need to go. We're not married. We're stopping right there. Stacey and I had a similar reality in our relationship. My freshman year of college, Stacey's freshman year of college, we went on a vacation with my parents to the Dominican Republic. And so these are some photos from that trip. You might notice that I have diamond earrings. I was a baller back in the day. My little sister took these photos, and it's a photo with our family. And I remember on that day, I was just madly in love. I just wanted to be with Stacey. And I'll just be frank with you. I'm 18 years old, and I want all of the benefits of marriage, if you're getting what I'm saying. And so I turned to Stacey. We're on the beach. She's reading a book. I look at her, and I say, hey, why don't we just get married? Let's just get married, right now. And I was like, I'll talk to my dad about it tonight. I did talk to my dad. I'll just let you know, I've never seen my dad drunk, but if this is drunk, that was my dad on that night, right there. He had just had the mojitos coming, right? He was like, what is wrong with my son? What have I done? And so we're together, and we're having this conversation, and I asked Stacey, hey, will you marry me? And she looks at me. She's reading a magazine, and she says, no. You don't make enough money, and we're too young. And she just went back to reading her book, and I was devastated. But it was the right decision. And she probably knew, like, that we weren't prepared. So how did we get prepared? Well, we had mentors in our life. I had Erin Reed. She had Melody Reed. And we prepared to get ready. Our hearts were there. Our desires and passions were there, but we had not done the preparation that was necessary. We made a commitment to our parents, especially her dad, that we would graduate college before we would get married. And the reality was not because you have to graduate college before you get married. It was just a good standard for us about kind of finishing things that we had committed to do and giving us some time to work on things. And so we stood by that. And so we graduated in 3 years, graduated on May, bought a house in July, got married August 1st, conceived a baby 2 months later. Hey, that was it right there. That last one was accidental, by the way. But God knew. Here's what I want you to get. Preparation is important. And so many of us jump from the pursuit piece to the next one that we don't allow the season of life that we're in to be prepared, to be the one that we allow God to do the work in us that is necessary. So he definitely wants to be with her. That's clear. And so the question is, where's she at? She told him, hey, kissing is as far as we're going. You got to go. Get up out my house. We're not going to watch that extra episode on Netflix. You need to leave, right? That's what happens. And then the question is, well, how does she feel? Well, we find out in Song of Songs, chapter 3, verse 1. And I think this is how Stacy felt when she told me no. The next night, it says this, all night long on my bed, this is her talking, I looked for the one my heart loves. I looked for him, but did not find him. Verse 2, I will get up now and go about the city, through its streets and its squares. It's kind of a dream kind of illustration. I will search for the one my heart loves. So I looked for him, but did not find him. Verse 3, the watchmen found me as they made their rounds in the city. Have you seen the one my heart loves, she asked. She's pursuing him now. Verse 4, scarcely had I passed them when I found the one my heart loves. I held him and would not let him go till I brought him to my mother's house, to the room of the one who conceived me. So he pursues her. They prepare. They find their passion beginning to rise. She sets the boundary. Either one should do this. They set the boundary. And then she finds in her heart, I really want to be with him. So this is what happens. He pursues. Fellas, pay attention. She responds. And then she takes him to mama's house, which means mama blesses. This is the pathway of healthy relationship. You pursue, there's response, and then the family, the people that know you best, they honor it. So she leans over and she says to her girls, she's going to say this over and over again, daughters of Jerusalem, I charge you by the gazelles and by the does of the field, don't arouse or awaken love until it so desires. Don't arouse or awaken love. Don't stir up all of this passion in your soul and in your heart unless you're actually in a place where you're ready to do this. This is why I tell teenagers all of the time, right? Unless you have Jesus and a job, you shouldn't be dating. Get some standard baseline things in play. Which leads, lastly, to the season of promises. This is the third one, the season of promises. Dr. Scott Stanley says this, if you are aiming for marriage, aim for a solid choice in a partner, and then look to form a public mutual promise to marry. This is the way of Jesus. The way of Jesus is you pursue, you prepare together, then you make promises. This is what we find in chapter 3, verse 6. Who is this? Coming up from the wilderness, she's speaking about her man, like a column of smoke, perfumed with myrrh and incense, made from all the spices of the merchant, meaning he smells good. This ain't Axe body spray. Verse 7, look, it is Solomon's carriage, escorted by 60 warriors. This is his groomsmen, the noblest of Israel. All of them wearing the sword, all experienced in battle, each with his sword at his side, prepared for the terrors of the night. Meaning Solomon has been with his guys. He's been preparing for this moment. The young man who's going to get married to his beloved, he's been walking a long path of preparation with brothers who care about him. She's been walking the long path of preparation with sisters who care about her. Verse 9 is going to be this poetic language around just the majesty and the beauty of a marriage and a wedding day. King Solomon made for himself the carriage. He made it from wood from Lebanon. Verse 10, its posts he made of silver, its base of gold. Its seat was upholstered with purple, the color of royalty. Its interior inlaid with love. That's just R&B right there. Daughters of Jerusalem, verse 10. Come out and look, you daughters of Zion. Look on King Solomon. She's saying, my husband is like a king, wearing a crown, the crown with which his mother crowned him on the day of his wedding. The day his heart, what? 1, 2, 3, rejoiced. Man, that's my heart for you. My heart for you if you're young and single or single again is that the next time you say I do, your heart's going to be rejoicing for all of the right reasons. Rejoicing because you've pursued a person and you know what it's like to be pursued back. Rejoicing because you prepared and you're able to make these promises, not half-heartedly, not faking it, but knowing I've done the inner work to be the kind of man that can love you for a lifetime. I've done the kind of work to be the kind of woman that can love you for a lifetime. The kind of rejoicing that I hope all of us can experience. Solomon says this to his sons in Proverbs 5:18. He says, let your wife be a fountain of blessing for you. Rejoice in the wife of your youth. Meaning the odds are stacked against you if you do it culture's way. If you do it culture's way, hook up, shack up, break up, repeat, it will be harder for you to rejoice in the spouse of your youth because the divorce rate's higher, the sex is less enjoyable, the connection isn't as deep, and the reality is you've been practicing for disconnection from the day you started. But how do you get old and love the woman or the man that you've been with from the beginning? The odds go up when you pursue them and you prepare yourself and then you make some promises.